about sleeping, sleep routines, how many hours of sleep you get. And I've been asking everyone else and I've not admit to the hours that I get. I think I'm getting, on average, probably about 5 to 6 hours of sleep every night, which isn't great. I don't think I struggle to get to sleep. I just have lots of things going ping, 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 ping in my mind pretty much all the time. And I maybe if I knew of the impacts that a lack of sleep was having, I might think a little bit differently. Now, new research has actually come out that adults, particularly adults over the age of 50, who nod off for less than 5 hours a night, may actually have an increased risk of developing conditions, including heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. But actually, those in general who have less than 5 hours of sleep, it's just not really great. So to talk to us a little bit about this is Fiona Burton. She is a counsellor, hypnotherapist and a sleep therapist in Hinckley. And she joins us this afternoon to tell us a little bit more. Fiona, this is a bit scary.
It is scary, and I don't want to be the voice of doom, because I'm a very positive person, and I also think that although this is quite daunting to hear, there is actually a silver lining to this, so it won't all be dark and scary.
So the research is suggesting that if you're having less than 5 hours sleep, particularly if you're over 50, it can have a really big impact. Roughly how many hours should people be getting?
That's a good question, because we really should be getting at least 7 to 8 hours. And people vary. Some people need to sleep a bit longer. Some people maybe have 9 hours that they feel is their optimum. Some people 7 hours is enough, but aiming as an average for 8. And I can't stress that enough. We've heard it over and over, but it doesn't seem to really sink in. And I think that's around this rhetoric of our society, is that we should always be busy, we should always be doing stuff. And at the moment in our society, sleep is seen almost as a bit of a luxury or an indulgence even, when actually it couldn't be further from the truth. Lack of sleep affects us on every single level, physiologically, mentally, emotionally. And, to put it really bluntly, if you have a lot of years, decades of not enough sleep, it really reduces your lifespan. So it really is, if you look at it the other way, good sleep and really healthy restorative sleep is like our elixir of youth. So we're missing out on that. It's so necessary to have.
And it's interesting because when it comes, we were talking before we went on air, when it comes to our children, it's we give them that grace and that luxury. I think I remember in the early days when my daughter was first born, a lot of like the classes I went to was saying and was teaching me that sleep is where your child grows. That's where they kind of capture everything in the day and they learn and expand. And I'm like, oh my gosh, go have a nap, like sleep for longer. And I've always stuck with a really strict routine for her, but I don't do that for myself. Do you find that to be quite common with
Absolutely,
adults?
And I'm guilty of it myself. And it's something I talk to. Obviously, I'm not coming at this from a medical or scientific viewpoint. I'm coming from it from a more of a therapeutic, a holistic way, looking at how it affects the whole person. But it's so interesting what you're saying, and I talk to my clients about this all the time, is that we can be really good nurturing parents to our children and do all the loving and caring things to give them the best chance if we have the resources to do that. But then it suddenly stops when we become adults, because nobody actually tells us when you become 18, 19, 20, you have to become your own parent. Nobody actually says that to us. So we kind of stop, and we just maybe don't always look after ourselves in the way that we should. And everything that you're saying is so true. All those things like it's learning. We consolidate all our learning when we're asleep. We lay down, new memories, new learning goes into our brain. It goes into our long-term memory. And if we don't sleep, then that just doesn't happen. Now, this is such a big topic, and obviously we could talk about other things that what affect sleep, like anxiety, because that's a massive thing for a lot of people. But when your brain is completely saturated, it's like a sponge. It's all wet, soaking wet with water. It won't take anything else in. And our brain has to process everything it takes in, every person it sees, every conversation we have, anything we watch on social media, anything we watch on TV. Our brain has to process all that. So no wonder sometimes when we're on our phones, on computer games, all that kind of thing, it's really difficult to get to sleep, first of all. And our brains are having to process that while we're asleep. So it's a lot of overload for us and stress for our whole system.
So what about those, as you say, who are struggling to get sleep? It's not necessarily a choice that they're super busy or they're overstimulating themselves, but for one reason or another, they are really struggling to get to sleep.
And my heart goes out to people like that. And I've been in that situation myself, because there are so many things that can impact on us, not, as you say, just because we're not choosing to go to bed, we're not being disciplined, but actually because we physically just cannot switch off and emotionally can't switch off, which as many people listening will know, is a result of stress, anxiety of any kind, loss, grief. And, especially when you're grieving, you need so much more sleep, a lot more than normal. I would say to people who are grieving, particularly of any loss or traumatic event recently, you need extra sleep, sleeping in the day, because your whole nervous system has to repair. And for people, what I would say for people, because we're only have a short time today, is if you really want to get your sleep on track and you really want good quality sleep, and I'm not talking about the kind of sedated sleep that we might have through alcohol or marijuana. Yes, it knocks you out, but you're not getting the good quality sleep, which is a mixture of the deep sleep and the REM sleep, where we've got the rapid eye movement and we're dreaming. We need a mixture of those. It's so important to get all the help you can. Now, there's a lot of information out there on the internet about good sleep. So do your own research. But what I would say is, if you can't help yourself, absolutely get all the help you can. Professional help. Go and see your GP, go and see a sleep specialist, go and see a therapist if you've got emotional stuff that's backed up and you need to clear that, because it's so important.
We've had a message come in from Phil in Leicester. He says, "Hi, Minata. I sleep for about 4 hours and then I wake up, but then I go back to sleep for about 3 hours. Does that count as 7 hours sleep?"
Yes, it does. And a lot of people come to me and they're anxious about their sleep. So that causes problems. They're anxious about not getting sleep, so that keeps them awake. So what I would say is, when you wake up after 4 hours, it really depends on what happens. You can train yourself to wake up and then get back to sleep quicker by not allowing too many tabs to open in your brain, because that's what happens is something will pop up, something else. If there's something worrying you, write it down beside the bed before you go to sleep, or journal or anything like that, so that your head's kind of empty of stuff and think, well, I can't do anything about it now, but if it's really important, I'll look at that tomorrow. So that's like productive worry. But also to people, a lot of people don't realise that actually we wake up naturally in the night. I mean, maybe we remember, maybe we don't, maybe we roll over or go up to go to the toilet, but it's normal to wake up a few times in the night, come into really light sleep, because each sleep cycle is about an hour and a half where you come back up into light sleep, and that's normal. So don't get too alarmed if you wake up, and what you're aiming to do, just very naturally, is just to try and reduce that time that you're awake, and just say to yourself, it's all right. And this is a big topic. There are so many things that we need to learn to do as human beings to really calm ourselves down, like we would with children, to set ourselves up for sleep, because it's so important.
It's all about giving yourself that grace and compassion. And I think with the way that life is going and lots of pressures and lots of stuff going on, you can just get caught up in the business and we don't offer ourselves the grace of something so simple. I say simple, but something so it's just like your body cycle to literally go back to sleep.
It is. It's so necessary. It's, as I said earlier, it's not a luxury. It's a necessity, and it is a very compassionate thing to give ourselves what we need, whether that's connection, food, exercise, sleep. These are all really important aspects of self-care. They're not indulgent. They're really necessary to lead a healthy, emotionally and physically healthy life.
I had a question also come in from AD Damon earlier on today. He said to ask you, what if you have little chunks of sleep? Now, AD wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning to come in and present the breakfast show. So he says he'll sneak in a cheeky 3 hours here. He might have another 2 hours nap. You know, can he amalgamate all those hours across the day?
No, that's a good,
does
good
that
question.
work?
Yeah, and especially, you know, I know Eddie's got a little girl, and people with babies, it's just not possible. People with, you know, even older children that don't sleep very well, and that's how I ended up getting into that job, because I had a lot of people I knew that whose children didn't sleep. So yes, it's not always possible. We can't always get a full, solid, unbroken 8-hour sleep. So yes, it is in that case, it is better to catch up and have your sleep in little blocks if you can, rather than just thinking, well, I've had 4 hours, I might as well get up now and that's it, and I don't go back to bed again. It's not ideal, and anybody who's the opposite, who's sleeping too much, needs help with that, because what it is our nervous system thermostat kind of gets a bit broken. So sometimes people can end up with their nervous system switched on, where they're really wound up all the time, and that's obviously somebody who's very anxious, and they're in fight or flight all the time, so they're always very stimulated, and they find it hard to switch off. That's like your nervous system switched on. So you need help with that. You need maybe some therapy, some help with being able to recognise what's happening. But equally, people's nervous systems can be switched off, and they go, that's when you're in depression, fatigue, and you just want to sleep too much. And when people are sleeping a lot at night and having naps in the day, then that obviously messes up your body clock. But like Adi said, life is not always perfect. We can't always get that. And for people who are having broken sleep or short sleep at night, yes, having a bit of sleep in the day to kind of make up for that is definitely a good idea.
Well, Fiona, thanks so much for coming in and sharing with us today. For anyone who wants more information on sleep, where can they go?
So one thing I did actually make a note of, which is really good, and it covers what we've just been talking about today, and you can get it on YouTube. It's a TED Talk, and it's called Sleep is Your Superpower. It's really good, and it covers a lot of the things we're talking about today. If you go on the internet for tips about sleep, there are so many. But as I say, if you have a chronic sleep problem, or you're really struggling with the self-help tips and doing a good bedtime routine, it's still not working, please seek help. Either, you know, I can help, or any other therapist who would work with sleep. It's really important.
Fiona Burton, counsellor, hypnotherapist and sleep therapist here in Hinckley. Thank you so much for your time with us today.
I've been holding on to peace.